Let's talk about the general trend of bizarre and disturbing announcements coming out of the mainstream hobby. And your hobby might be literature, it might be tabletop, it might be video games. What we're going to talk about is the deeper cultural underpinnings of the movement to push our culture into the direction of, and here I have to pause for a moment. The generally accepted term these days is woke. But it's important to understand that that is a mask worn by the most ancient of mankind's enemies. In the past, it has gone by other appellations: liberal, or progressive again, or Masonic, or communist, or socialist, or enlightenment, or rationalist. Well, I'm not too sure about that one. I'm not really much of a philosopher, but these are all masks worn by the same enemy and by servants of the same enemy. And we're not here necessarily to mock them. We're here to understand them because, as a wise Eastern philosopher said, if you understand yourself and you understand your enemy, you will never lose a battle. Not here to engage in the usual culture war stuff, really here to look at this from a deeper philosophical level. We start with a deeper understanding of modern fantasy and the way it works and the principles by which it operates. Modern fantasy takes a broken individual, a freak, a mutant, a bizarre outlier, an outcast, and a misfit, and it changes the world around that character to conform to that character. The world changes, and the world learns that the mutant is really at the center of all being, and the world should be there for the mutant, for the freak, for the point of view character doesn't need to change. The world needs to change to suit the character. Maybe, in a pinch, the character needs to come to grips with how awesome they are. That's about the extent of the journey that a modern fantasy character has to take. Contrast this with classic fantasy, which puts the reader or the player into the role of a hero, someone who is stronger than they are, better looking than they are, braver, or more cunning. And it says to the reader, come along, climb into the skin of this hero, as this hero goes out into the world and attempts to change the world for the better. Not necessarily for his own sake, but because it's the right thing to do. Because it makes the world a better place. Bear in mind, rewards may accrue, but the point is to go out and do battle and strive, both within yourself, win your internal battle, to overcome your internal inconsistencies, so that when you go out into the world and do battle with the forces of evil, you can make the world a better place. This philosophy is millimeters away from the idea of taking the world and restoring it to its rightful place as Eden by making the world a better place for its sake. We bring glory to God. We do what we do to make the world a better place because that is our purpose in life. We have a desire and a thirst to return to Eden. And one day, if we serve God well, we will return to Eden in the next life. But while we're here, we can make this world a slightly better place. The modern conception of fantasy is to strive within and without to push back the forces of evil to make the world a better place through your effort. Modern fantasy is that the world changes to conform to you. You don't have to change. You're perfect just the way you are. This is one of the iconic images of first edition Dungeons and Dragons. A paladin in hell is a physical representation of a righteous warrior doing battle against demons. If you squint your eyes just right, and if you look through open eyes, you can see yourself in this picture. Your demons aren't barbed-tailed physical creatures, but they are the demons of entropy, perhaps. When you mow your lawn and you plant a nice garden. You plant a new tree under whose shade you won't sit. You make the world a slightly better place. You're pushing back against the forces of entropy. This is the modern understanding of fantasy. That the things you read about in the book inspire you to perform the same sorts of deeds out in your daily life. John Carter, a hero of the Confederate Army, with hundreds of thousands of worthless dollars in his pocket, is transported to Mars, where he frees the planet from slavery, not because he's looking to make a quick buck, but because it's the right thing to do. He, through his efforts, his courage, his strength, and honor, and his willingness to adapt to the world, is able to change the world for the better. This is the traditional understanding of fantasy, and it has been subverted, as all things are, by the servants of the original rebel against creation. Bear in mind, they're not entirely wrong. These people are word wizards who understand that if you chant a mantra long enough, you may be able to convince enough people of the truth of the mantra to change the overall perception of the world. Just as you, through your daily actions, are trying to create heaven on earth, or at least help earth more closely approximate our heavenly rewards, they are trying to push the earth towards the opposite direction. And if they can fool enough people into thinking that unhealthy practices are healthy, and enough people adopt those tactics, then the world will actually conform to their way of thinking. Your defense lies in sticking to the truth. The truth is absolutely a defense in this case. And that is why it's important for you to reject the modern understanding and conception of fantasy. When you sit down at the table, do not reject the concept of real physical evil. It is a force that is present in the universe, across the universe, and across all universes. If you adopt and allow for the presence of evil in your campaign world, it better prepares you to adapt and to deal with evil in the real world. The forces of the ancient rebel understand that repetitive practice trains your mind, and they wish to commandeer decision-making pastimes, such as tabletop and video games, to train your mind to accept the falsehoods, and to train you to accept the sorts of trolley problems that they delight in, that force you to adopt their philosophy. You have to reject those. Reject them utterly. Reject them at your table. And embrace the love of the good, the beautiful, and the true. As a committed and loud proponent of faction play, we do need to pause here for just a moment and point out that if you are engaged in a player versus player game, a Braunstein, and it's a Braunstein where there is an evil faction, it is a profound act of charity to step into the boots of the leader of the evil faction for two reasons. The first is that, as we said before, if you know your enemy and know yourself, you will not lose a battle. If you step into, momentarily and for a brief time and for an event, the mindset of the forces of darkness, if you learn to think the way they think, then you can anticipate their actions and behaviors and become better at getting ahead of them, at interrupting their OODA loop. That's the observe, orient, decide, and act. If you know what they're going to do before they do, then you can stop them from doing it. And so if you can develop the skills of understanding how they think, then you can disrupt their thought patterns, both in the table and at the real world. There's a second reason, though, and this is the reason I consider it a profound act of charity. You and your fellow players are at the table, and one of the things that happens at a deeper level at the table is that you are training each other to either accept the world and the natural law as it is, and training yourself to make proper decisions away from the table. Without a representative of the adversary at the table, Your players are playing on easy mode and they're not fully prepared for stepping out into the real world. When you don the persona of the Dark Lord and you challenge them at the table, you are helping strengthen them for the fights away from the table. You are a sparring opponent, and you adopt the mindset of, if I know your weakness, then the Dark Lord knows your weakness, and I'm going to exploit it as the Dark Lord to help you overcome that weakness. This is what happens in the boxing ring, in the octagon, on the jiu-jitsu mat, and also in your role-playing game. Don't be afraid to adopt the persona, but do it with a generous spirit and a loving heart. And don't go down that road if you are prone to temptation. As a wise philosopher once said, a man's got to know his limitations. And there's no shame in walking away from the evil faction because you don't want to get that taint on your soul. We're thinking about things from a much deeper level. And I will leave you with one last thought. We have the advantage over the adversary because we have a single united symbol of our faction. We never don masks. The only face we wear is the face of truth. We face the good, the beautiful, and the true. And we never have to waver from that unchanging truth the way that our adversaries have to constantly withdraw and push forward and put on a new mask and don a new term. Remember, they adopted the term woke to distract from the term progressive, which had become tainted by association with themselves. As another wise philosopher once said, paraphrasing here, wherever they go, there they are. And they can never escape from that. Wherever you go, there you are. And since you cannot escape from that, by adopting the philosophy of classic literature, I cannot escape my weakness. I can only overcome it. I can only destroy it and become stronger and better. Then you will become a stronger and better person. And all you have to do is persevere through these trials, and you will receive the rewards in the next life or in this life that your characters are sure to receive at the table, in the video game, and in the books. Something to think about. Till next time, I'm praying for you.